Hello everyone, and welcome back to Simple Strategy. I'm Jason, and on today's video, we're throwing it back old school with some tips and tricks for the Parker Brothers board game, Clue. Now, while this might not be as modern of a game as we usually talk about, if you haven't sat down and played a game of Clue in several years, I'd encourage you to dust it off and give it a try. My family and I just did this a few months ago and had a blast. To implement today's main strategy, there's actually a bit of pre-game work that needs to be done. You need to create a grid with rows for all the people, weapons, and rooms on the left side, and enough columns for the number of players you have, plus one for the envelope. Some newer versions of Clue actually come with sheets like this, in which case you're already set. If you have an older version though, have everyone quickly sketch out a grid before the game, or print out copies of an online version. Once everyone has a grid, you're ready to play. The point of Clue is to enter rooms, assume suspects of the murder of Mr. Boddy, press F to pay respects, and be shown cards from players who can disprove your room, weapon, person assumption. But you don't have to wait until it's your turn to discover information. Every time an opponent makes an assumption, you gain more knowledge about the cards others are holding. Say Matthew assumes Colonel Mustard in the study with the lead pipe. Sarah says she cannot disprove that assumption. Suddenly, you've just learned that Sarah doesn't have three specific cards. If Jack has information on the assumption and shows a card to Matthew, you now know that Jack does have one of those three cards. To notate this, put a little number 1 in the box for each of those three cards under the Jack column. The next time Jack shows someone a card, I'd notate that assumption as a 2, and so on. Now say in the future Sarah asks about Colonel Mustard in the study with the revolver. Jack says he has no information on that assumption. That means you get to cross out those three boxes, and when you do, the last number 1, the lead pipe, becomes the only card that Jack could have shown to Matthew to disprove his assumption from before. Suddenly, without having to make an assumption yourself, you've learned one of the cards in Jack's hand. If Andrew assumes the murder was done by Miss Scarlet in the ballroom with the rope, and everyone says they can't disprove that theory, then you get a ton of information. Suddenly you know that all three of those cards have to be either in Andrew's hand or in the envelope. If Rachel asks about any of those three cards later, and Andrew says he doesn't have information on that assumption, then you have discovered one of the pieces of information in the envelope. And that's again, without even asking the question yourself. Depending on the length of the game, you might also be able to figure out what cards people have by process of elimination. If you realize at any point that in a single column you have crossed out all but 3 or 4 boxes, depending on how many cards players have in their hand, then you immediately know that that player must have all those cards, which also means no one else could have them. In the opposite way, if you realize you have 3 or 4 cards circled in a single column, equal to the number of cards that player has in hand, then you can cross out all the other cards from that column, which can help if it lets you see only one other place where a specific card could be. Usually there will be one piece of information that I get that creates a chain reaction of discoveries. And that's the type of opportunity you miss out on when you only cross out the cards directly shown to you. The best part about doing this is it heightens the skill and strategy of the game. But what's also great is that it doesn't make the game any longer. You actually have a fewer number of turns in the game because players figure out information much quicker, which helps balance out the extra time of pre-game work and players taking time to jot down info. Finally, Clue is all about evidence, and this method helps you collect evidence throughout the entire game. However, it also helps if you need to make an educated guess. If you are confident that Matthew is going to accuse on his next turn, but you don't quite have all 3 cards figured out, then it doesn't matter. You have to guess now or you won't win anyway. That's when this method comes in handy. If you know the killer and the room, but don't know the weapon, you can make an informed guess by seeing what cards others might have shown during the game. Now, it won't work 100% of the time, but if you're confident you won't be getting another turn anyway, it increases your chances of guessing accurately. This strategy is most fun when all players are taking part in it, as it makes the race to information much more efficient. It also keeps all players engaged, even when it's not their turn. You've just leveled up. Thanks for watching Simple Strategy. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe and let us know what game you want to see in future videos.